Good morning. The Yoga of Relationships by Isabella Figlietti by Sundari. Chapter 2. What is love? We cannot discuss relationships without asking what is love. Vedanta contends that you are love, a challenging concept. What does it mean? It means that you're not limited, an incomplete person, the small self persona. You are in fact whole and complete, unchanging, unlimited consciousness, the self. If that is true, what is the non-intuitive logical connection between love and consciousness, your true self? The logical connection between love and consciousness, new heading. Plagued by erroneous limiting dualistic self-judgments, most of us believe that to feel lovable, we need someone to love, or that we need to be loved by someone. We see ourselves as inherently flawed and lacking, so it seems like love is something entirely apart from us. How can love be what I am when my life seems so empty without it? How can it be me when I think I need a special other to love and to love me? There is, however, a logical connection between my nature as non-dual love and non-dual existence consciousness. It is this. If love exists and reality is one non-dual principle, as Vedanta contends, there cannot be a difference between love and consciousness. Therefore, I am love. If this argument fails to impress you, the following idea makes it real. New heading, the actual connection. The bridge between love and consciousness is willing attention. Love is not how you feel. Love is not how I feel about you, contrary to popular opinion. Because I'm always conscious, except when I'm sleeping, I'm always paying attention to something, which means I always love something. We don't pay attention to what we don't love. If you love your children, you're always thinking about them, taking care of all their physical needs, cuddling and playing with them. If you do not pay attention to your loved ones, they will not feel loved, and you do not feel lovable or loving. You know this is true because you do not feel loved if your loved ones do not pay attention to you. New heading. What is attention? Love is not a special feeling that arises when I contact an object of my desire. It is my limitless nature, consciousness, in the form of attention directed through my heart to an object, the beloved. It does not come from objects, it comes from me, although certain objects evoke the love that I am, like the people we are closest to, or the things we are most attracted to, such as a beautiful sunset or a moving experience. So, what is really going on when we feel love for and receive love from others? Whenever we get what we want, we feel happy. And when we have managed to make ourselves happy, we love ourselves. But when I am in a love relationship, it looks like the happiness comes from the object of my desire. If my lover happens to leave me for someone else, I am unhappy. But if you think about it, love cannot come from objects. If it did, the same objects would make everybody happy. But they don't. An object only has the love value our attention assigns to it. We may love our child, husband, wife more than anything in the world, but others do not love them like we do. When we remove the identification with objects, it leaves us with love, nothing else. We say love means different things to different people, but only because we don't know what love is. We believe love comes from outside of ourselves and completes us. It never does, because it is our nature. Nobody can give it to us, and nobody can take it away. New heading. What about hate? You could argue that there are many things that you do not love, yet pay attention to. So, how does that square with the idea that I am love? Because it is true that you only hate something or someone when it suits you. Hate is love too. It is paying attention only in a negative way. It pleases you to love or not to love an object because you love your dislikes, even though you are always free not to dislike something. Nobody has a gun to your head regarding where you put your attention. Therefore, not loving an object because you dislike it does not negate the fact that your nature is love, which is true even if you hate yourself. Even people who kill themselves do so because they love themselves so much that they don't want to suffer any longer. Our likes and dislikes, fears and desires do not come from outside of us. They bubble up from within us. They're born of ignorance of our non-dual love nature and contaminate our ordinary everyday mind when they emerge from our subconscious mind. That last line I'll read again. They're born of ignorance of our non-dual love nature and contaminate our ordinary everyday mind when they emerge from our subconscious mind. Positive and negative love. New heading. Positive and negative love. Likes are positive love and dislikes are negative love. They are you, but you, love, consciousness, are free of them if you know who you are. Even if you are stuck in duality and don't know who you are, once you realize how silly, gratuitous, and fickle your likes and dislikes are, you won't feed them and they will gradually disappear. You may argue this point because you believe that gaining or avoiding what you want produces happiness, which boils down to loving yourself. For instance, you say that you dislike your job but remain in it because you need the money. But the truth is that you love money more than you dislike your job. And you love money because you love yourself. You think that the things money can buy can make you happy. And you want to be happy because you love yourself and you feel happy. But if someone has a knife at your throat and demands your money or your life, you will hand over your money because you love yourself alive more than you love your money dead. If you're dead, you won't be present to love yourself, which is the greatest joy. Everything we do, think, and feel is for the sake of love. It's hard to accept the fact that you do not love an object for the object's sake, because we want to believe that we love unselfishly. But all love is selfish, because there's only one non-dual self. The object that you love or don't love is just you appearing as the idea of an other in your mind. New heading. Non-dual love. The definition of dualistic love is mental attraction to an object that is a source of joy. Right? The definition of dualistic love is mental attraction to an object that is a source of joy. Dualistic love always fails to give us what we actually want in the long run, although it seems to satisfy us in the short run. Non-dual love, love of our true self, which happily includes the small, egoic, personal self, never fails to give us what we want, because we are what we want and we are always present. Non-dual love always exists. It is the ground of our being and does not require the presence of any object. You cannot augment or deplete it. An object is defined as anything other than me, consciousness, the self. If I know something, it cannot be me. When we talk about material objects, we generally use the word like, whereas in the case of living beings, we use the word love. But there's no difference. In fact, it's hard to love something or someone we don't like. There's nothing wrong with loving objects, particularly when I know that all objects are non-separate from me, the self. But the love of others without self-knowledge is defective and limiting because it cannot give us permanent satisfaction. New heading. Why object love is defective. Love of objects is flawed because it creates dependency in a world of constant change. If the people with whom we fall in love didn't change, dependency wouldn't bother us. But the other half of experience is us, conscious beings. It so happens that we change too, which complicates matters tremendously. If our feelings about material objects, hairdos, clothing, vehicles, or dwellings change, why shouldn't feelings for people change? At the beginning of romantic love, especially, we are so invested in getting what we want that we only notice compatibilities, so the love keeps flowing. But sadly, as time passes, incompatibilities peek through and puncture the love bubble, at which point my darling bundle of joy quickly becomes a darling bundle of misery, even though he or she has not changed. Duality being what it is, attractions turn into repulsions. We may initially profess great love and marry to gain intimacy or security, only to have the love turn sour, in which case, lacking the courage to leave or drive the love object away, we become bored and remain in the relationship of our duty, indifference, or fear of change. Or we may end up competing with each other for any number of reasons, only to watch the relationship devolve into a power struggle. It can get so bad that only the thought, I want to destroy you, remains. Our once blissful visit to the church ends up as an acrimonious visit to court. New heading. Love, hate, relationships. How can you love and hate the same person? From an unconditional, non-dual perspective, if you love someone, you are just loving yourself. Conversely, if you hate someone, you're just hating yourself because there's only one of us and our nature is love. But if you're locked in duality, you think you are in a relationship with someone else. Even then, you are deluded because that someone is just a stand in for your likes and dislikes. When your likes and dislikes change, your feelings for them change. Dualistic love is conditional love. Your lover's good points are those qualities that conform to your likes, and their bad qualities are those that conform to your dislikes. Your likes and dislikes have nothing to do with who they really are, and not with who you are either. Non dual love is open, free, impervious to hatred, and destroys conditional love. When conditional, dualistic love turns to anger, hate, discrimination, dispassion, and common sense deserts us, and we become incarcerated in a loop of fear. Perversely, in abusive, emotionally dissonant, codependent relationship, hate becomes a way of loving. Celine Dion sings, I hate you, then I love you, then I hate you, then I love you more. Hate can even function to preserve the powerful yet destructive intimacy of such relationships when both connection and separation seem impossible. Chapter 3. Why we seek love relationships. Why we seek love relationships. Number 1. Security. When I don't know that I'm whole and complete, I feel insecure. When I feel insecure, I don't have time for self-examination. I'm too busy trying to secure myself in an uncertain world. If I don't have time to discover the reason for my insecurity, an endless round of activities will extrovert my mind, mask and reinforce my sense of insecurity, and not relieve it. My self esteem will suffer, and I will always be worried. I won't realize that I don't want my significant other for his or her sake, but only to solve my problems, which does not bode well for the relationship. So I become deeply attached, which is contrary to the freedom that knowing my completeness confers. Worse still, I will be denied the knowledge that my desire for a relationship is a poor proxy for a secure, loving relationship with myself. The dependence on objects approach to self love suffers the glaring defect of all objects. The objects change, and or my need for the qualities that the object seemingly supplies changes. Thus, my sense of insecurity requires me to continually seek reasons to love you. This cancerous fact slowly eats away at my soul and creates a sense of neediness that does not contribute to a happy future. On the surface, I may feel quite smug that I can keep a relationship going despite my neediness, but my needs put pressure on my partner, preventing them from looking after their own karma, which in turn makes him or her unhappy and pressures me to give emotional support. It's a self perpetuating cycle and a certain recipe for dissatisfaction. Love flourishes in self sufficient peace and tends to crumble in the tension of expectations. Relationships born of self ignorance build karma, not exhaust it. Karma is fine, but its glaring downside, fear that the results I need to manifest to make me secure will not manifest, accompanies all of my actions and stifles the love that keeps the relationship on solid footing. Needy people rarely pair with other needy people because a needy partner is too self absorbed to cater to the needs of others. But if you have a needy, clinging nature, you probably need to find another needy person and endure the pain until you develop a bit of dispassion towards your needs. You will certainly not attract a self contained person because they avoid needy people like the plague. If a self confident person takes up with a needy person in an emotional crisis, he or she will definitely suffer because it is a violation of his or her nature. The desire for wealth in one form or another, a government job, for instance, is the most common solution to the insecurity issue. But what if I'm not financially insecure? While wealth produces insecurity, it also produces momentary contact with the bliss of myself, which makes me relax and feel good, which in turn makes me temporarily love myself. If you win the lottery, or even come into a small inheritance, you will love yourself until the anxiety of keeping what you have gained destroys your happiness. Number two, why we seek love relationships. Number two, pleasure. Ignorance of my wholeness creates pleasure seeking. It doesn't feel good not to know who I am because it produces daily anxieties and depressions, which may lead me through the sacred portals of the senses, where sex, drugs, and alcohol, or even wholesome activities like sports and eating, promise to make me feel good. When I feel good, my boredom fades and I love myself. Stacking up money endlessly or showing up for work every day is boring. We want variety and novelty. Seeking a relationship because you're bored, adrift, and purposeless in life, or as a distraction from your issues, causes endless drama and disappointment, because feelings are notoriously fickle. But I can't help it, because the pain of separation from the love that I am motivates me to seek quick fixes. Passion. I want passion. Sex is the poster child for bored individuals seeking passion. It's an interesting activity as far as it hopefully produces orgasm, the be all and end all for needy worldly people. When your desire is completely expunged, you experience the bliss of the self directly. When this bliss punctuates periods of anxiety and or depression, it seems to be extraordinary, even though it's an unremarkable lived experience for self-actualized people, for whom it is a normal state. It is the normal state. It is seemingly less exciting for self-actualized people because the bliss of knowing who they are is constant. 24 hours of sustained pleasure day in, day out is infinitely more valuable than a lifetime of fleeting moments of intense pleasure sandwiched between perfunctory and unfulfilling activities. Furthermore, sustained sexual interest in a love object is by definition a contradiction because sexual attractions are notoriously fickle in that they are produced by hormones which nobody controls. Extreme sexual passion feels very good, but it's one of the most destructive energies known to humankind, burning everything in its path. It only works in a relationship when it is subordinated to a solid, mature love based on higher values, a passion for the truth particularly, which burns the impurities of the soul. There's only one source of pleasure, the self. So, for the sake of intermittent pleasure, are you willing to allow your desire to feel good mask direct access to the pleasure of being who you are? Having said that, the pleasure of an orgasm should not be an end in itself, but should point to the ultimate pleasure it reflects, the endless satisfaction of self knowledge, of self knowing. Why do we seek relationships? Number three, separation. Self ignorance causes us to identify with the body, which perceives differences and causes me to think that I'm separate from others. I think I'm alone and therefore feel lonely. So I reason that a relationship with someone else will relieve me of my sense of separation. But if you seek a relationship because of the fear of being alone, you need to confront the fact that we are always alone, even when we are with others. Nothing can change this. There's a big difference between loneliness, the absence of self knowledge, and aloneness, the unchanging, unlimited, blissful presence of the self. Even when we love someone else, we should think of ourselves as alone because it's simply the truth. The important things in life must be done by you, for you in the aloneness of your consciousness. Nobody comes down the birth canal holding hands with someone else, not even twins. Only one body fits in a casket. Although intimate relationships provide fertile ground for working out certain psychological issues, we do not need one to find out what needs to be worked out. Our unconscious mind is dynamic and produces the karma we need, irrespective of our lifestyle status. Thinking I need a relationship to grow spiritually is just an excuse to avoid working on myself, because ultimately I have only one issue: my relationship with the ever present self. Number four, the desire to be different. Ignorance produces a rigid need to conform to the limiting self concepts that all societies need to maintain their identities. But those identities very often conflict with my idea of myself. Understanding that society is not going to change leaves the onus on me, so I want to be different. I may cover my body in weird tattoos, dye my hair orange or purple, decide I want to be like someone I admire, and to associate with people who have the same contrarian notions. You don't need to try to be different because you're changing all the time, in or out of relationships. If you gain or lose anything, it changes you. Sickness changes you, sometimes for better, sometimes for worse. Health changes you. Everything changes you. There's no reason a relationship should make it easier for you to change bad habits or limiting ideas about yourself. In fact, relationships provide many opportunities to develop bad habits and often reinforce negative self concepts, leaving you feeling less rather than more whole. That many people in relationships end up bitter and disappointed is not an argument against relationships, just a call to sanity and reason. Nor does the occasional good relationship mitigate in favor of relationships. A relationship may transform you into a more spiritual person if you have the right attitude, but it is not always the most efficient way to transform yourself. If you practice self inquiry correctly on your own, positive, inevitable, gradual transformations will take place. But you shouldn't practice self inquiry specifically to make yourself a better person, although your personality will improve by default if you are a disciplined inquirer practicing self inquiry. Self inquiry is not about becoming a perfect or better person. It is intended to set us free from the desires and fears which bedevil good and bad people alike. So, self inquiry is intended to set us free from the desires and fears which bedevil good and bad people alike. It's best to ask why you want to be transformed in the first place, a belief that is the consequence of a negative self judgment. Nothing you do can transform you into a perfect person, however you conceive of it, because you cannot make perfect what is imperfect. Even if you improve, you will always feel that you're not good enough. When will you stop trying to be different from who you are, from what you are? The feeling that you need work is born of a misunderstanding about who you are. It will not go away if your personality changes. You are the perfect self, and you cannot be modified, not the imperfect person who wants to be transformed by a relationship with someone or something. To be free of the need to change, we need to understand how and why we are perfect the way we are, and let go of the belief that we are imperfect. Only then can we love our relative selves unconditionally as a true reflection of the perfect self that we always are. When you fall in love with someone, you are in your best behavior because your worst instincts are suppressed, at least until you feel secure in the relationship. Once the suppression mechanism is no longer required, you revert to type and discover that you are the same person you were in the last relationship. Someone who wanted a new relationship to get back his or her lovable old self. Relationships are one of the best ways to circumvent dealing with the parts of ourselves that need work, because we end up dealing with somebody else's stuff. Even if you are a lovable person and your stuff doesn't bother you, someone else's probably will. In any case, I need to know that the ostensible reason for my relationship is never the actual reason. I don't ultimately care about the object. I care about removing my sense of dissatisfaction that I have with myself. End of chapter 3. Have a good day. Tomorrow, chapter 4. What is it on? Let me see. Chapter 4, Obstacles to Love Relationships. Have a good day. Bye.